The narcissist will be back, and when that moment comes, never let yourself be trapped. Imagine someone from your past scheming to slip back into your life, meticulously planning their reentry as if you were nothing more than a puzzle to be manipulated. Psychologists describe this behavior as recycling of narcissistic supply. The narcissist sees you not as a person, but as a source of validation, control, and emotional energy. Much like a rat probing for weaknesses in a foundation, they scan for vulnerabilities in your defenses, looking for the slightest crack through which they can worm their way back. For the victim, recognizing this as a deliberate strategy rather than coincidence is crucial. It reframes the encounter as an act of psychological manipulation, not a moment of genuine reconciliation. Some returnees come armed with love bombing, a sudden cascade of charm, compliments, and seemingly heartfelt gestures. Dr. Ramoni Dervisula notes that love bombing is a classic narcissistic tactic. It is designed to overwhelm the target with affection and admiration, making them more pliable and emotionally dependent. Paired with a fake apology, it creates a dangerous illusion of change, coaxing victims into lowering their guard. Psychologists warn that the apology often lacks authentic accountability. It is performative, aimed at eliciting compliance rather than fostering healing. Victims who recognize these patterns can protect themselves by observing consistency over time rather than reacting to immediate gestures of affection. Others employ a victim narrative, recounting their own trauma to justify past transgressions. While trauma can shape behavior, it does not excuse manipulation or abuse. Experts like Dr. Carol McBride emphasize that narcissists often weaponize their experiences to create moral confusion in their victims, framing themselves as misunderstood or wronged. This tactic can induce guilt, making the target feel responsible for their suffering. Awareness is the antidote. Understanding that the narcissist's narrative is self-serving allows victims to maintain boundaries and emotional clarity. Some return with anger, blame-shifting, or convoluted excuses designed to confuse and gaslight. Clinical literature identifies gaslighting as a form of psychological control in which the abuser deliberately distorts reality to make the victim doubt their memory or judgment. For example, a narcissist might minimize an offense by blaming the victim's reaction. "Yes, I hit your car, but you screamed at me first, so you should give me another chance." Psychologists warn that engaging with such rationalizations reinforces the narcissist's control and can re-traumatize the victim. Maintaining written records, consulting with trusted friends or therapists, and resisting the impulse to justify oneself are critical strategies for protecting emotional well-being. No matter what tactic the narcissist employs, charm, apology, victimhood, or anger, the underlying intention remains unchanged. They have not genuinely transformed. Clinical research shows that narcissistic personality traits are persistent, and without genuine therapeutic intervention, patterns of manipulation continue. The narcissist may attempt to reframe past events, distort blame, or rewrite history to convince you that reconciliation is logical, but your lived experience is evidence enough. Trauma specialists emphasize the importance of trusting your memory and emotions. They are your compass through the distortions and manipulations. Ultimately, the key to safety lies in awareness, boundary setting, and emotional validation. Recognize that their reentry is not an offer of growth but a test of your resilience. Psychologists recommend observing patterns rather than isolated behaviors, refusing to engage in moral debates, and seeking support from networks that reinforce reality. In doing so, victims reclaim agency, preserve their healing, and prevent the narcissist from hijacking their life once again. The past may knock on your door, but knowledge, clarity, and boundaries are your shield. Imagine someone trying to rewrite the story of your life with them, implanting false events and erasing the truth you lived. Psychologists identify this as a classic tactic of gaslighting, a deliberate attempt to distort reality and make the victim doubt their own memory, perception, and judgment. Covert narcissists are masters of this manipulation, knowing exactly which buttons to press to create confusion and self-doubt. For the victim, the psychological impact can be profound. Anxiety, self-questioning, and a creeping sense that maybe, somehow, they misremembered everything. Trauma experts emphasize that recognizing these distortions as intentional manipulation is the first step toward reclaiming control. When the narcissist offers a so-called apology, it is rarely an expression of genuine remorse. Clinical research, including work by Dr. Ramoni Dervisula, shows that narcissists often confuse their own discomfort, regret for being caught or for facing consequences, with true transformation. They may feel guilt or shame, but it is self-focused, not directed at the harm inflicted. For the victim, this distinction is crucial. The apology is performative, aimed at restoring the narcissist's access to supply, not at repairing the relationship. Psychologists caution against interpreting these gestures as evidence of change. Doing so exposes the victim to renewed manipulation. Covert narcissists may employ subtle tactics to slip back into your life: a fake social media account, an unusual phone number, or even mutual friends as conduits. Each attempt is calculated to trigger familiarity and emotional response. Psychologists note that this is part of what they term narcissistic hoovering, designed to draw the victim back into a cycle of abuse. For the victim, the key is to recognize these attempts for what they are: not spontaneous or genuine, but strategic efforts to regain control. By trusting your memory and emotional intuition, you resist the psychological tug-of-war. They want you to forget. They want you to believe in their fabricated narratives, to reconcile with them under false pretenses. But your lived experience, the moments of betrayal, manipulation, and pain, cannot be erased. Trauma specialists like Dr. Judith Herman emphasize the importance of grounding yourself in your reality. Recalling what truly happened and acknowledging the emotions you felt is both protective and empowering. These memories are not weaknesses. They are evidence of survival and discernment. The narcissist's so-called regret is rarely about the pain they inflicted. It is about the consequences to themselves. Clinical literature consistently notes that narcissists prioritize their self-image above empathy or accountability. If anything, the remorse they display often reflects disappointment in being exposed, caught, or challenged, not sorrow for the suffering they caused. For victims, understanding this is critical. Their safety and healing are independent of the narcissist's performance of regret. Recovery requires accepting that the narcissist's feelings are irrelevant to your emotional truth. Strategies for protecting yourself include cutting off contact, documenting interactions, and reaffirming your own perception of reality. Psychologists recommend surrounding yourself with supportive networks and mental health professionals who validate your experience. By maintaining awareness of the narcissist's tactics, you reclaim agency over your mind and spirit, ensuring that no false narrative can overwrite the truth you know. In the end, the narcissist's manipulations reveal only one certainty: they have not changed. Their concern has never been you, it has always been themselves. Recognizing this truth allows victims to stay grounded, preserve their boundaries, and protect their emotional well-being from further abuse. Picture this: someone from your past, the very person who drained you dry, is now at your doorstep, figuratively or literally, wearing a mask of regret. Psychologists who study narcissistic abuse, such as Dr. Ramoni Dervisula, warn that this moment is not accidental. It's part of what they call hoovering, an attempt to suck a victim back into a cycle of exploitation. The narcissist's goal is simple: to feed off your emotional energy until you are depleted. They're not interested in healing or reconciliation. They're interested in access to your time, your empathy, your loyalty, your spirit. The regret they show is rarely, if ever, genuine. Trauma therapists point out that narcissists often mistake being caught for being wrong. Their shame is not a moral reckoning, it's a survival instinct. They regret using a tactic that exposed them, not the pain they inflicted. Some even harbor a chilling wish that they'd been more skillful at hiding their cruelty, more covert in their manipulation. In clinical terms, this is not remorse, it's strategic self-pity, a calculated performance designed to soften your defenses. And so the charade begins. They will express regret and remorse, but psychologists clarify that this is not a sign of emotional growth. It's a bid for control. Genuine remorse involves empathy for the harm caused. Fake remorse centers the self, its losses, its inconveniences, its damaged image. Victims of narcissistic abuse often misread this display as sincere, partly because they themselves would mean it if they apologized. This is where the trap lies. We assume others' hearts work like ours. Recovery experts urge victims to examine not words, but patterns of behavior over time. Spiritual metaphors can also help illuminate the danger. Proverbs 26 verse 11 says, "As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his folly." Psychologists might phrase this differently, but the meaning is the same. Returning to a toxic person after being freed is re-entering the cycle of harm. Think of it as the body rejecting poison. You've purged it, but the narcissist is trying to spoon-feed it back to you, repackaged and disguised. Healing requires refusing to consume it again. This is the essence of trauma bonding. Research shows that intermittent reinforcement, cycles of love bombing, abuse, and fake remorse, creates a powerful psychological addiction. Victims may feel compelled to give one more chance, even when they know the outcome. The antidote, therapists say, is awareness. Grounding yourself in what actually happened, not the story the narcissist now wants you to believe. Write it down, tell a trusted friend, or work with a counselor to anchor yourself in reality. Remember this truth. The narcissist is not returning because they care about you. They are returning because you are supply. Without your energy, they are empty. Without your attention, they fade. And as long as they remain unchanged, still manipulative, still entitled, they will repeat the same cycle with the same results. Protecting yourself is not cruelty, it's self-preservation. The wisdom of the proverb is not just spiritual, it's psychological. Don't return to what made you sick. Don't reconsume the poison. Recognize that being freed from a narcissist is not only an act of divine grace but also an act of self-liberation. Staying away is not weakness. It's the ultimate boundary, the line that keeps you safe from further harm. Imagine God, or life, or your own intuition, has delivered you from someone toxic, someone whose presence was slowly making you sick, emotionally and spiritually. Psychologists often describe this as escaping a toxic relational environment, a space where emotional, psychological, and sometimes spiritual harm accumulate over time. Now imagine turning back to the very people who caused that harm. Clinical literature, including the work of Dr. Ramoni Dervisula, calls this the relapse cycle of narcissistic abuse, returning to someone who has historically drained you, manipulated you, and violated your boundaries. Trauma specialists liken it to a fool repeating a folly, entering the same destructive pattern from which they were liberated. Covert narcissists are skilled at exploiting nostalgia, loneliness, and small positive memories to lure their victims back. Psychologists note that this is a form of cognitive manipulation. The narcissist amplifies minor good moments to overshadow the overwhelming evidence of abuse. Your mind begins to replay ice cream sundaes, shared laughter, or casual social outings, not the constant stress, gaslighting, or emotional depletion. Trauma experts explain that this selective memory plays into what's called intermittent reinforcement, a psychological pattern that makes the victim crave reconciliation and emotional validation despite past harm. Recognizing this manipulation allows victims to anchor themselves in reality. It's the 15 million negative experiences, not the 2 pleasant ones, that define the relationship. A key point psychologists emphasize is that narcissists do not miss you in the way a healthy person would. Dr. Carol McBride notes that narcissists miss only what you provide: your energy, your attention, your accomplishments, or the reflection of their own grandiosity through you. They do not mourn your growth, your resilience, or your success. They mourn the loss of access to their narcissistic supply. For the victim, understanding this is critical. Every expressed longing or plea for reconciliation is self-serving, not relational. Your boundaries, not their words, are the measure of your protection. This dynamic becomes especially dangerous when the victim feels loneliness or emptiness. Covert narcissists exploit these vulnerabilities, presenting themselves as the solution to isolation, subtly framing reunion as comfort or love. Psychologists explain this as a manipulation of attachment needs. Humans naturally seek connection, and narcissists weaponize this need to regain control. Strategies to counteract this include cultivating alternative support systems, maintaining social networks that validate your experience, and deliberately focusing on your own growth and well-being rather than perceived emotional voids. Ultimately, returning to a narcissist is not a path to healing. It's a return to old patterns of harm. Psychologists stress the importance of recognizing that any perceived benefit from the relationship is illusory. The narcissist's goal is never mutual enrichment. It is always to regain leverage, to extract energy, and to reassert control. Protecting yourself means resisting temptation, reaffirming your personal boundaries, and trusting the wisdom of the life or spiritual guidance that delivered you from that toxicity in the first place. Your liberation is evidence of your resilience. Returning is a step backward into the same destructive cycle. Psychologists who specialize in narcissistic abuse often warn that the most dangerous phase of a toxic relationship is not when it's ending, but when the narcissist is plotting their return. In clinical terms, this is the hoovering phase, a calculated attempt to draw you back into the cycle of harm. Imagine a predator studying its prey, waiting for the right moment to strike. This is not melodrama. It's a behavioral pattern backed by decades of research in personality disorders. They want you back in that negative energy, that suffocating cycle, because this time they hope to be sneakier, more covert, and harder to detect. Psychologists call this escalated covert abuse or death by 1,000 cuts. Subtle jabs, microaggressions, and tiny manipulations that individually seem harmless but collectively erode your self-esteem and stability. Dr. George Simon, an expert on manipulative personalities, explains that covert abusers thrive on plausible deniability. By making their attacks small and dispersed, they make you question your own perceptions. Was that really them, or just bad luck? While they continue to undermine you. This is not accidental. In the time you've been separated, they've been rehearsing new tactics, playing out scenarios in their mind like a chess game. If you don't respond, how will I react? If you do respond, how can I inflict harm more discreetly? This is a hallmark of manipulative individuals, strategic thinking aimed not at reconciliation, but at domination. Psychologists identify this as predatory rumination, where abusers fantasize about regaining control and perfecting their methods. While you saw yourself as a partner, a friend, or someone extending compassion, they saw you as a resource, a walking ATM, a portable battery to recharge their ego, a lantern to light their darkness. Dr. Kristen Milstead, a researcher on narcissistic abuse, emphasizes that victims of covert narcissists are often deeply empathetic individuals whose emotional labor and light are exploited as a fuel source. This isn't about who you are being enough or not enough. It's about them reducing you to an instrument for their own gain. And this is why psychologists warn so strongly against repainting the picture of who they are. The actions they've already taken, the lies, the betrayals, the gaslighting, form a portrait of their character. Victims often engage in what therapists call trauma bonding reframing, where they reinterpret past abuse to justify staying connected. But as Dr. Ramoni Dervisula says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Forgiveness is healthy. Forgetting, however, can be dangerous. Your separation from these people was not random. Whether you frame it as divine intervention, intuition, or self-preservation, psychologists affirm that escaping a toxic relationship creates space for healing and purpose. Many survivors struggle with guilt or nostalgia, but that's precisely the vulnerability abusers exploit to lure you back. Understanding the psychology of this cycle can fortify you. You were removed from that situation because you are valuable, because your life has meaning, because you have a future beyond being drained by someone else's darkness. So, hold the frame as it is. Do not let them repaint their portrait with fake apologies or newly rehearsed words. Recognize the tactics, remember the pain, and stand firm in the truth of what you experienced. Psychologists agree, this is not merely self-defense, it's self-respect. And in reclaiming that, you not only break the cycle but affirm the greater purpose your life was always meant to hold. Imagine someone in your life whose sole purpose seemed to be draining you, day by day, minute by minute. Psychologists often describe this as chronic emotional depletion, a hallmark of narcissistic abuse. Victims frequently report feeling tired to the bone, as if every ounce of their energy has been siphoned off, leaving them unable to pursue their true potential. This is no accident. Covert narcissists thrive on the emotional labor of others, exploiting empathy and devotion for their own gain. When these people attempt to return, subtly testing boundaries to see if you'll allow them back into your life, it is essential to remain anchored in reality. Clinical research on boundary setting emphasizes that victims of narcissistic abuse must recognize patterns rather than isolated moments of charm or apology. The narcissist is not returning to make amends. They are returning to reclaim supply. Psychologists call this hoovering, the calculated effort to lure you back into the cycle of manipulation. Understanding this allows victims to respond with clarity and firmness rather than confusion or guilt. Faith and personal values can serve as powerful anchors in this process. For those with a spiritual framework, trusting in divine guidance, or in one's own moral compass, can reinforce boundaries. Studies in positive psychology highlight that having a sense of purpose and higher meaning buffers against manipulation and fosters resilience. Victims who maintain faith, structure, or a guiding principle are better equipped to resist the pull of a narcissist and to protect their energy. Importantly, recognizing that these individuals could never appreciate your value is a form of validation. Psychologists studying narcissistic personality traits note that empathy deficits prevent narcissists from valuing others' boundaries, feelings, or contributions. No matter how many chances you gave, they were unable to internalize or respect your worth. Accepting this reality is critical. It is not rejection on your part to refuse them, but self-preservation. You are allowed to protect your energy, time, and emotional investment from people who will never reciprocate it. Finally, grounding yourself in purpose and destiny, whether through faith, personal goals, or psychological self-determination, serves as a protective strategy. Trauma specialists emphasize that having a clear vision for your life helps prevent regression into toxic relationships. By maintaining boundaries, staying vigilant, and focusing on your growth, you ensure that no manipulative individual can derail your progress. Every prayer, every intentional step forward, every act of self-care is a shield against those who would seek to hinder your destiny. Remember, your energy, your time, and your life are yours to protect. Narcissists do not deserve explanations, reconciliation, or second chances once they have repeatedly shown their incapacity to value you. Standing firm is not only self-respect, it is the necessary step toward realizing your purpose, your calling, and the life you were always meant to lead.